Today I'm celebrating International Literacy Day. Now, literacy is something that is held as an incredible accomplishment of human beings. And I don't disagree. It has enabled us to be able to, the act of reading and writing has enabled ideas to be shared globally in a non-local way. So we were able to distribute ideas far beyond where we could travel, and they enable us to open up our world to ideas, places, past and future, all from wherever we find ourselves. And that's an incredible thing. But I would just like to take a second to question if that's wholly been a gift to us. Because the origin of words were pictures. We had pictograms. If we go way back to the Egyptians, for instance, or to the other forms of inscription that predated the Egyptians, they began as pictograms. We would have a picture that represented something that we could see, and it was usually something from the natural world. So we had a very visceral connection to those images. But then, as our pictograms evolved to represent not just a particular idea but maybe a sound, they became more and more abstract. And as those symbols have become more abstract, they no longer resonate with us as in, that's a bird, I know what that bird is called, that's an animal, and I know what its nature's like, I know how it operates, that's a cup, and that's the meaning that a cup has to us as human beings. As we developed into this more and more abstract reality, spending more and more time in that abstract world, it does seem as though we have been divorced from nature to some degree. There's a separation from the natural world that is, I suspect, for us to heal. And it's not that abstract symbols prevent us from seeing the natural world, but if we involve ourselves with them too much, then we can begin to forget the world from which we emanate. It's a bit like the danger of virtual reality. If people involve themselves more and more in virtual reality, they forget the fact that they're actually a human being, an animal with a body that requires food and sustenance and go to the bathroom. I mean, you must have heard about these gamers that sometimes play wearing nappies or with like straws plugged in so they don't have to move from their consoles because they're so involved in that digital world, they're no longer responding to their physical needs. And in a similar way, literacy has had that effect, and it really intrigues me that there's this massive, what seems like a rise in dyslexia. Maybe it was always there, maybe it's not been monitored in the same way. But people who struggle with literacy, I wonder if it's a really deeply felt rebellion at being pushed, encouraged, made to feel guilty or shameful for not entering that world of symbols, that world of abstract representations, which is not fully tangible. I think I understand, I empathise with people that would have that kind of resistance. Why should I learn your interpretive system, your system of magic? Because it is magic. We spell our words because words are spells, and every time we involve ourselves in those abstract realms of symbols, we're involving ourselves in somebody else's spell, somebody else's magic. And sometimes it's wonderful to let an author cast a spell upon us, to be carried into their imagination, carried into their vision. For that reason, I celebrate literacy, because being able to read has brought me so much stimulation and interest and invitations into other people's worlds, into their dimensions, invitations into places that I could never have visited otherwise. So I'm thankful for literacy, but I also just wanted to touch on the caution that I have around it. For instance, my two smallest children, I'm not encouraging them to read yet. I will do, but until the age of 7, Rudolf Steiner suggested that the human brain isn't quite ready to accept that kind of abstract reality. So I'm not pushing it. That will come along in all in good time. Uh, Saying all of that, I've spent much of my life as a teacher and as an English teacher, and what I've seen in how it enables us to connect with other cultures, it's just incredible. And now the technology is making it even easier for people to be able to share ideas even across languages, because the translation skills are getting so good. They're never going to be perfect because there are ideas in cultures which cannot be translated. But still, I wish to celebrate literacy because I think it's the means to access incredible knowledge, incredible awareness. If one uses it correctly, like anything, it can just become like junk food if one doesn't carefully choose the sort of things we put into our mind using those abstract symbols. But anyway, today is to celebrate international literacy, the aspect of reading and writing. One thing I do want to share about this is funny because people often think that school is where literacy is learnt, and it's a little known fact that when the Europeans crossed to the United States and were first settling in New England, just as a game for a second, guess what the percentage of literacy was at that time. What percentage of the population were literate as they in those early days of New England on the east coast of America? 99%. 99%. The amount of literacy we see today is far less and has been less ever since the introduction of the school system. It's been generally declining. And I think that's because young people at that time saw their parents reading and they wanted to read. You know, life was perhaps a lot more boring then. Children had plenty of opportunity to get bored. There wasn't constant stimulation through the screens. And so that meant that they wanted to know what their parents were reading. They wanted to be able to visit those other places. So they wanted to learn, and they taught themselves, or they learned with their families how to read and then sometimes how to write. And when school came along, that just forced people into this world of literacy. And it wasn't necessarily with the same invitation. It didn't have the same appeal. It was a demand that one had to sit down and start reading and start writing. And I think that has really undermined people's inclination to learn how to read and write, which is something which I still benefit from today. They're my thoughts on World Literacy Day. As ever, it's not as cut and dry as one might immediately think, but I do choose to celebrate this, and I would like to take a moment of silence just to give thanks to all of those people that have contributed to the language that has enabled us to be able to evolve our intelligence in the way that we have. Giving thanks for literacy. Have a good day.